Hey everybody, Mark Summer here of Summer Energy Technologies. To my left is Jesse Summer, my son. And Jesse, why don't you tell us about this bike in front of us?
Yeah, so I want to start out with, like many of you that are also in this industry, whether it's energy or any of the other industries that we may know you from or that you may know us from, none of us wind up doing these things because it seems like the ideal job. But instead, it is sort of the natural progression of the things that we're passionate about from an earlier age. And for many of us, that's mechanical related, whether it was cars or old pickup trucks or old farm equipment. And for our case, heavily motorcycles and dirt bikes are really what kind of sparked the interest in mechanical equipment, mechanical engineering to some degree for both of us. And so that passion still lives on. And so this is a 2000 Honda XR650R that I found on the wonderful Facebook Marketplace just 2 weeks ago and have been doing a lot of work to since.
So, Jess, can you tell us about what you've done? What was the bike like when you got it, and what have you done?
Yeah, so I saw it online. The bike was complete. It was about 2 hours away, and I was the first person to message the seller and made arrangements with him at his earliest convenience, and I made the drive out there to be at his house at like 7 a.m. to check it out. One of the first things I did was a compression test, and found, unfortunately, the bike had very low compression. That's not something I was expecting, as I thought the biggest problem was knowing that the wiring and the electrical had been hacked into, and it didn't have spark. I thought that was mostly what it was going to need to run. And so upon finding that and doing some basic top-end inspection, checking out the valve lash, making sure that's set right, and ended up tearing down the top end, finding a blown head gasket, and so basically rebuilt the top end with new piston rings. Fortunately, a previous owner had put a lot of brand new parts in the top end. There were just some things assembled incorrectly, so it had a brand new piston in it. So I just needed new rings, new wrist pin, cleaned everything up. Everything was in spec, got that together, and have entirely redone the electrical system as well with new wiring. You can see some of what's under the seat, some of the mess here, because these bikes did not come street legal. So turn signals have been added, a headlight, horn, a DC circuit with a regulator, rectifier, and everything to run other accessories. And so now it's a matter of waiting on some other parts. The tank unfortunately cracked one night after having old fuel that had sat in it and was drained out, and then the fresh fuel, I guess, just ate it in and cracked. So I've got a brand new oversized tank on the way. It's got an aftermarket carburetor on it that's no longer supported and is missing parts. So I've got a new OEM carburetor, or a used OEM carburetor, on the way. And so just various odds and ends like that to get it all buttoned back up.
Can you get into a little bit more detail into the engine? Because I saw firsthand, Jesse found low compression and got into it. And the way we do things, I'll tell you to what we do for a living, is that I say we bring a Formula One level of attention to detail in the work that we do. And Jesse hears my quotes all the time. I say, the way someone does one thing is the way they do everything. So can you just talk about, was it just the compression was low and you just, threw something in the tank to try to fix it? Can you just walk through that a little bit, and, from what you found, measurements, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, that's a good question. So if we want to go really deep into the whole process there, the first thing after taking the compression test and finding the low compression values is these bikes, since they have such high compression, they have both a manual compression release on the handlebars. There's a little lever that it actually depresses one of the exhaust valves, so that the engine doesn't really build any compression, and so that you can cycle it through easily if you flooded it, or you're trying to draw fuel into it before starting. And then they also have a tiny little section on the cam that when the engine is spinning under 400 RPMs or under 800 RPMs, there's two specs. I'm not sure which one it actually is, but it depresses one of the exhaust valves. It lifts it off a little bit and relieves some of that pressure to make starting easier. And so that if either of those are faulty, that's going to give me a false low pressure reading. So the first thing I did was completely disconnected the manual compression release lever and made sure that the linkage on the rocker arm where it actually sits, made sure that linkage was in the proper position. And then I loosened up the right exhaust valve so that even when the cam is depressing that valve, if there's enough lash, then it's not actually depressing it. So it should build full compression. And at that point, the numbers were still low. So then I pulled the valve cover off all of the way to be able to check engine timing. Because if the timing is wrong, then compression is going to be way off as well. And the timing was correct. I added then some oil into the spark plug hole to see if it was like a ring issue. If it was, then the compression would increase when that oil was on those rings. It's going to like help them seal temporarily, and we're going to get higher numbers. But if it's like a head gasket problem or a valve problem, oil will not do anything about that. And oil did not help, so took then the head off and the cylinder off all of the way, and found an area between the combustion chamber and the timing chain tunnel. It's a very thin area where the head gasket seals, and that's where I believe it was blown. And then also it had new valves in the head, but the valves were not lapped properly. They're stainless steel valves that should be lapped just slightly, just to make sure that they seal well, and they needed that in order to really seal properly. But the valves weren't leaking before doing that. Before taking the valves out, I did check the head, and the valves weren't leaking. But then I lapped them anyhow, just to clean them up and to look at that mating surface and make sure it was nice and uniform. And they did need lap just a little bit, even though they were sealing. And so that was the full process then. So then it's measuring, checking the cross hatching of the Nicosil bore, going through all of those specs, ring in gap, piston to wall clearance, all of the specs that you're looking for.
Yeah. That's great. So you bought this bike. We have a thing in our family with Honda motorcycles going back to the 60s with my dad, Jesse's grandfather. And this is just a bike that's kind of been on the radar. Jesse, you found it. And then, but what was some of the motivation to buy the bike and to get it to this high level of performance and same time serviceability?
Yeah, that's a good question as well. So the not nostalgia, but sentimental value of Honda motorcycles in general, that's definitely an aspect of it. And then I've always just thought that these specific bikes, the 650Rs, are so cool because of their Baja heritage, that they were just completely dominant in the Baja 1000 for quite a few years, still regarded as the best Baja bike ever made. Not that modern bikes aren't now beyond, but as far as an off-the-shelf, straight from the factory, go race the bike that needs the least and is the most competitive, this was it. And so I think that's really cool. And so there are some racing plans for the future of this bike beyond something that's coming up that we'll get into. And yeah, so that's really it. And also the fact that these bikes are somewhat uncommon now, and there's not anybody really doing a whole lot with them.
So Jesse alluded to something that's coming up. So what is coming up? Today is February 16th and the weekend of February 27th. Jesse will be riding this bike, race prepared by himself, sponsored by Summer Energy Technologies, in the Sandblast Rally. So, Jess, can you tell the folks a little bit about the Sandblast?
Yeah, so Sandblast is an event put on by NASA Rally Sport in South Carolina and various sections of some state forests on some open sand roads. There's some pretty deep sand there. It's kind of the only event like it anywhere in this part of the country. And it's a stage rally. And so if you aren't familiar with that, the format is basically the same as WRC, which I'm sure many of you have seen. Where there's race stages that are on public roads that are closed off, and that's what you race on, and then you transit and you drive then or ride to the next stage where it's another long stage that's closed off public roads. And so the area lends itself well to some interesting racing because it's deep sand and a really cool region. It's wide open, it's fast, and so usually these events are only for cars. But this is one of very, very few events. It's the only event like it anywhere in the country that has a motorcycle class. So not only are cars and side-by-sides running, but motorcycles get to run as well. And so it's just a really neat opportunity to do a very different style of racing than anything I've ever done. And I look forward to it. I look forward to seeing how the XR does and learning a thing or two about some different kind of riding and giving it my all.
Excellent. So we've been talking a lot. I'll bet people would like to hear this high performance 650 single. So can you start it up?
Yeah, we'll see if we can. Yeah, we've got this little auxiliary tank hooked up since I can't put fuel in the stock gas tank. So we'll see if I can get her fired up. So you'll switch on, pull in the manual decompression release, and just rotate her over 5 times. I think that's 5. And go till we hit top dead center. Roll it over there, about an inch past. Give it a good kick. There she goes. We can turn on our lights here. We got our tail light and brake light. Right, be able to see our turn signals, headlight. Don't want to gas ourselves out too much there, but she's got a little bit of low end bog because the parts that are missing on this aftermarket Edelbrock carburetor are for the accelerator pump. So when you twist the throttle, there's supposed to be a shot of fuel straight into the combustion chamber, almost straight down the venturi of the carb, and those parts are missing. So it doesn't have an accelerator pump, so I've just kind of tuned it around that for now. But we've got a OEM used carb on the way that I should be able to get jetted pretty quickly and tuned well, and should do us better for the plans with this bike. But otherwise, she runs smooth, starts well, and sounds healthy.
So I think we covered everything. So yeah, just watch this space for race results coming up. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.